Rockin' in the Middle Ages by
Finley,
Ellie,
Mallory,
Liam,
Akash.
Weapons, castles,
feudal system,
entertainment and food,
and girls and boys.
The knight's most important weapon is his sword. The most powerful kind was the double-edged cutting sword. A knight might also hang a second great weapon from his saddle. Another important weapon was his lance, a long wooden spear tipped with steel.
Knights had plenty of other weapons too. A flare was an iron ball chain attached to a handle. The ball was covered with sharp spikes. A mace was part club.
Castles were an important part of the feudal system. They were built to protect lords and their land from enemy attackers. Nobody knows exactly when the first castle was built, but the busiest time for castle building in Europe began about 1050 and lasted until the end of Middle Ages. So many castles were built during this period that historians sometimes called it the Age of Castles. There were over 12,000 castles in Europe. The first castles looked more like forts in the Old West than castles in fairy tales. They were built out of wood. These castles were usually built on a mound of earth called the moat. They had a tower called a keep, a yard called a bailey, and a tall fence called a palisade. Wooden castles could be built very quickly. Some were built in less than a week. But wooden castles didn't always protect lords from their enemies. Enemy armies could break through wooden fences. They could burn down wooden buildings. Stone was much better defense against attack. So, by the 1100s, most castles were being built out of stone.
The feudal system is like a ladder. The king is on top. The nobles ruled over the knights ruled over the peasants ruled over no one. If you were a peasant, you would live in a small cottage with 1 or 2 rooms. Most peasants' cottages were simply built a new one. The old one would be used for farming equipment and to house animals. Merchants who sold or made goods often lived in 2-story homes. The ground floor was the workshop. You'd live on the second. There were special places for men and women who belonged to religious orders. If you are looking for an easy job, do not be a peasant. Farming in the Middle Ages involved endless hours of back-breaking work. Why? Well, experts for a few oxen to pull the plows, it is all done by human muscle. Also, there was very little fertilizer, so it's hard to grow a decent crop.
Fairs were often on holidays such as Christmas and Easter and more. The feasts were often in the Great Hall. The Lord gave most of the workers the day off. Townspeople sometimes performed in the villages. They acted out stories from the Bible. There were also market days and trade fairs. Market days often happened once a week. On market days, farmers and merchants set up stalls outside the castle gate. People on the manor came to buy food, clothes, and other goods. Trade fairs happened once or twice a year. At trade fairs, merchants from around the world came and set up tents. They sold everything from candles and soap to fancy daggers and swords. People from nearby villages sold pies and cakes. The minstrels walked through the crowd singing songs. Their songs often told stories of heroes and their adventures. There were even trained dogs and bears that could dance for pennies. Everyone on the manor looked forward to market days and trade fairs. On these days, they could take a break from their daily chores. They could shop and they could gossip and share news with their neighbors and friends.
Not many children went to school. If a girl wanted to be a nun, she might be sent to a school run by a nunnery. Most people taught girls
thought girls only needed to learn how to run a household, but some girls were taught to read and write anyhow. Some of the sons of nobles or knights were taught reading and writing by tutors or priests who lived at the castle. Today, people live long lives. Many celebrate their 100th birthday, but that wasn't true in the Middle Ages. Most people did not live past the age of 50, so girls and boys who wanted to have a family got married young, often by the age of 16. Girls did not choose who they would marry. Some girls were taught to read and write. Many daughters of nobles went to live in another castle when they were 8. They learned to dance and play musical instruments. A noble woman learned how to manage a castle if it was attacked when her husband was away. She was in charge of hiring the servants, choosing the wines, planting a kitchen garden, and treating illnesses with herbs. The children of merchants helped their parents by selling wares and cleaning the shop. Even the children of nobles and knights worked. Girls helped with spinning and other chores. Boys trained to be knights. Some boys were sent away from home to learn a trade from an expert. At the age of 14, a child could be an apprentice to a master who taught him everything he knew about his trading craft. You might learn to become a stone cutter, a tailor, a carpenter, or a metal worker.
Action.
Everybody dance now. 3, spread it. Everybody fall.